the proper seating position and the proper position for all of your driver controls is really important. Transmission tunnel test fit number 3. All right, nice set of coilovers. Hello everyone, welcome back to Maverick Mods. This week I'm on step 16.4 of doing all the modifications and the fab work necessary to move the Z28 parts over to the Firebird. So today I'm going to work on the transmission tunnel. The old tunnel, perfectly good, no real problems with it, but I had two issues that were issues. One was the 6-speed going in is a little bit bulkier than the old 4-speeds and the old automatics. So wasn't a whole lot of room in there. I was going to have to relieve some areas anyway. And the other problem was by going with the torque arm, even though the torque arm and the drive shaft will fit in the existing tunnel, it's really tight. And it's a little tighter than I was comfortable with. So I was going to have to modify that part anyway. So by adapting over at least part of the Z28 transmission tunnel, I gain a little bit of extra room with a tunnel that basically was designed for this transmission. I get a built-in shifter opening with the boot that goes with it and the center console that goes with it, and all the bracketry for the emergency brake, which is I'm getting rid of the foot activated brake, going with the center console activated brake from the Z28. So let's get started looking at what it's going to take to move the tunnel over. So why on earth did I just spend precious time reinstalling the old steering column, steering wheel, old seat, and the old center console? Well, it's all about finding the perfect driver position and the equipment position the way it used to be in order to position the new equipment. So new steering column, for all intents and purposes, this point right here probably should be in just about the same location, old column versus new column, things like that. So everything is kind of in position just so that I can get a good baseline about where everybody and everything needs to be when all of the new parts and pieces are in. Why am I doing this? Well, I mean, other than the obvious. I'm really big on ergonomics. My previous career, I spent close to 30 years wiggling my butt in an uncomfortable seat halfway across the ocean up front in the front office of large Boeing aircraft. And they did a pretty good job of making the front seats just about the most comfortable seats on the airplane. But hey, if you're sitting for 15, 16 hours in the same seat, time after time after time, believe me, being comfortable and the proper seating position and the proper position for all of your driver controls is really important. So I'm going to take and spend a good fair amount of time making sure I get all of this right before I really start cutting things and repositioning and replacing things. So that's why. So one of the pretty important things to get right is shifter position. So unfortunately, this original console was an automatic console, and there's no telling where the original shifter was supposed to be other than the hole in the floor, which we've never really determined if the previous owner cut that in. Who knows? We do know that these two little inserts right here probably were for the automatic shifter, and that would kind of make sense based on where the other things are. But so I've got the engine transmission in, I've got them located where they're going to need to be. And as you can see, the shifter itself is going to wind up exiting the floor right about here. So I'm sitting here, which is going to put the shifter right there. And it should be probably neutral about right there, which is just about perfect. That was not me making vroom vroom sounds, I promise. Anyway, this would be just about perfect. So, that's one of the many things that I've got to get locked in as I get the new equipment set in. So I'm going to take a ton of measurements, seating position, steering wheel position, anything I can think of before I really start tearing things apart in here to get everything in place. Okay, so I've got about as many measurements as I can think to take. I'm not going to take everything apart right now, but I can get some of this out of the way. I don't need this old center console anymore, so it can go bye-bye. I can take the seat out and I can get rid of these brackets here because I definitely don't need them. I'm not sure how much of the tunnel I'm going to have to modify yet. Still working on that, but I do know I'm going to have to make some relief cuts in this area just so I can get the transmission to come up just a touch higher. So I've got to get the seat out first. Well, that's the wrong size. Put the seat out of the way. I cut these brackets off, and I'm going to come in and relieve some of this tunnel just so that I can start making room for where everything needs to go. Now, before I get too all fired crazy, I probably ought to cover, actually, you know what? I've got a sheet metal nibbler. I'm going to give that a try and see if I can just kind of nibble that out. Let's see how that works. Now, I haven't used this thing in at least 2 months worth of Sundays. Don't know if it's going to work, but hey, it's in the toolbox. Let's give it a try. That's why it is. There's a bulkhead back there, a cross member back there that I'm hitting into. Well, I think this is going to go back in the toolbox. There might be a better use for it somewhere, but for doing this kind of stuff, cut off wheel on the grinder is just a little bit better. Give me a little bit more work with the grinder, just to open up some access. I'm going to stick the shifter in. This will be the 100, and this will be the first, maybe third time out of 112 times that this shifter will go in and out. The process of test fitting everything. I also took a little bit of time with the grinder and just kind of cleaned up the edges here, because it's just a matter of time before I slice one of my fingers wide open. Part of the integration of all these new parts and pieces, and that's the HVAC box, or actually the whole air conditioning heating system, the dash, steering column, pedals, seats. Integral part of all that is the center console and the transmission tunnel. I've been doing a little test fitting here, and obviously it's The initial cuts and everything, I left that off, but I've got the tunnel just set over top of the existing tunnel, and we'll kind of peel everything away in a minute to reveal it. Right now it's sitting probably about maybe almost 2.5, maybe close to 3 inches too high in the front, and probably 1.5 inches or so too high in the rear. And you'll see why in a minute, but I just want to check, get it centered, close, kind of in the ballpark where it needs to be. So let's get some of the parts and pieces off of here, and I'll show you where we're at currently. Alright, so that was the shifter console. Here's the center console. Now it's off. And the main reason I had all of that on there was I want to make sure that the shifter laterally and actually that would be longitudinally and laterally, that the shifter is pretty much where it needs to be. And basically, according to where the engine transmission is sitting, this is where the tunnel needs to sit, at least longitudinally. I'll level it in order to make sure that nothing is sitting cockeyed. Now, what I'll have to do is just start shaving away both the existing tunnel and the Z28 tunnel until the two of them kind of match as close as they're going to match. And let me grab the camera here. I'll show you where we're hitting to start with, and why I need to do what I need to do, and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Obviously, as you can see up front, I'm really high up in the front. I know about that, and that mostly has to do with the sides right here. I've got these creases, dimples, bridges, whatever you want to call them, that are interfering down here on both sides. You can kind of see it back there. So I'll have to trim those away, and that'll let this drop down. But it's also way up in there. I don't know if you can see it or not. The top of the transmission is just barely touching the existing tunnel, and I've got a reference point on this tunnel as to how high it needs to be, so that'll tell me how far down I can drop this on the front. On the rear, back here, underneath here, is the bracketry for the emergency brake and the cables and everything. And so the bottoms of the brackets are actually sitting on the tunnel right here. And what I'll do is I'm going to start relieving the existing tunnel to let that drop down, and I'm going to relieve my dimples here, let this drop down, and we'll do another test fit. So I did a little trimming, and we're going to do a second test fit here. Set it down, line up my alignment marks, my reference marks. Okay, so I'm pretty much where I need to be. Alright, so let's take a quick gander here. Back here at the back, I'm now down to where my brackets are not hitting on the original tunnel anymore. Not bad here, not bad here. Of course, I'm still high up here, and I know why. I need to keep trimming the front part of the tunnel. I need to start trimming down here as well. But let's stick a level on this real quick and see where we're at. I'm quite a bit off there. Well, if I move it over, it takes quite a bit to get it, and I'm not quite level, and I'm moving the tunnel out of position. So what that tells me is, if I go back to kind of the point that it needs to be, which is right there. So let's take a look and see where it's hitting, which is causing some of the next issues. So along the edge here, basically I'm touching all along here, basically right in here. So what I need to do is I need to relieve this area a little bit more. I might even be able to pull it out a little bit. And then my next area, see I'm loose here, but next area I'm hitting down here so I can start taking some of this away. And I'm hitting up here so I can just inch my way up a little bit here. Let's take a look at the other side. On the other side, I got plenty of room up in here, in fact, a little too much. But I'm also hitting right about here. Not so much here, not so much up here. So what I need to do is, again, I can bring this up. I don't want to go too high here because I want to keep this radius here, because that is part of my shifter boot and center console area. So in this case, what I'll start doing is I'll start bringing the tunnel edge down as well to relieve that. In fact, I might just actually kind of hammer that in a little bit until I know I've got my positioning. So out it comes for round 3. Transmission tunnel test fit number 3. Okay, so I cut some relief on the driver's side there. Pulled this side out a little bit just to give me some room, and it helped a lot. I'm too tight in a couple of spots over here, kind of up toward the top of the tunnel now, and I've got some areas back here. But now what I can do is I can also start working a little bit more in the front, so I can start dropping the top of the tunnel, and that will help as well. So basically, doing this kind of work, obviously not everybody does this kind of stuff. I don't do this kind of stuff all the time. This is a project I'm having a lot of fun with and trying some new things, but this is fab work. If I'm trying to take part from a vehicle that was never meant to go into this vehicle, it's going to take a lot of test fitting, a lot of trial fitting, a lot of 1,000 cuts a ½ inch at a time, but I'll get there. So next time you see the transmission tunnel, it'll be basically final fitting. So I'll spare you all of the gory details, in, out, cut this, trim here, and we'll come back to the tunnel when it's ready for basically the very final fitting and time to weld it in. Okay, we're back with the final fitting on the tunnel. I've got enough trimmed away that it's in place. I've got it tacked in position up front, in the back, and everything's nice and level. Shifter is exactly where it needs to be. So at this point, all I'm going to do is I'm going to work piece by piece, little by little, and I will form these two, the old tunnel. I'll cut away a little bit at a time underneath. The upper tunnel, same thing, cut away a little bit at a time. I started working on the driver's side here, up close to the shifter opening. I have moved the engine transmission out of the way because I need access to the inside of the tunnel. But you can kind of see where I'm just working a section at a time and stitch welding my way up. Once in a while I'll have to make a relief cut just to make things fit. And so I'm going to leave this here for now. I'm going to work on the passenger side next to show you kind of how I'm doing this. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because this is going to be just a long, tedious process. But I'll show you a little bit of what it takes to stitch these two tunnels together. So I'm going to start in the same area on the passenger side. I'm going to work from here, stitch my way up here. Notice I've got quite a bit of a difference in the shape here. So I'm going to work this part forward, make some relief cuts here, bring this part in, this part out a little bit, just so everything can kind of meet there and make a nice smooth transition to toward the front there. I've got a little bit of extra metal back right up in here, so I'm going to go underneath and kind of shape that a little bit, cut it out of the way. So that's where I'll start. So what I'm going to do here is make a relief cut right along this seam right here, and basically I'll have the width of the disc, which is just about the perfect width for a gap for stitch welding. So here we go. I need air. Now I'll go underneath, hammer this out just a little bit to match the edge here, and we'll be able to be ready to weld it. Okay, so I've got a good edge here. I'm going to start there. I'll just keep working back on the seam till I get right to here. Okay. All right, now I'm going to work forward. Now in this area here, I'm going to need to do two things. I'm going to need to bring this part in up probably to about here. But I'm also going to need to cut the floor here, right down here somewhere, probably down to about right there. So I'm going to make myself a mark about right there. And then here, I'm just going to pie cut this. Maybe a little bit too much. Let's try it initially. Okay, let's see how that does. I've been working my way up the tunnel here. Before I started here, I think I made it that far, maybe. But if not, I got this part. And I've got it up to here. At this point, I think I'll move back over to the other side. That way I kind of keep it the same. Then I'll work my way up the top. It's awfully boring just to watch me sit there and stitch weld, so I'll just give you progress reports as the tunnel progresses. For now, I'll keep pressing on. Well, that's going to do it for this week. Wait a minute. Nope, got one more thing. Well, guys, the magic delivery truck brought us a present. Let's do some unboxing, see what's in. Looks like a spring. Wow, comes in its own sleeve. All right, so we have one. This is a 10-incher, so this is one front spring. I'll bet you that's another spring. Those are the front springs, 10-inchers. And that'll be the other rear spring. Box number one. I wonder what's in box number two. All right, now these ought to be the fun ones. Oh yeah. Here we go. All right, nice set of coilovers. Got the tie bars to mount to the front. And we've got our locking rings for the springs themselves. I'll set these aside and do a little demo on how to put a set of coilovers together fairly soon. Okay, same drill. This is a rear spring. I can tell because it's got spherical ends on both sides. Same deal. We get the shock and the locking rings. That's really going to do it for this week, guys. The tunnel still has a little bit of work yet to do, so I'll continue getting that stitched in. The coilovers obviously came in, which will allow me to finish up a lot of the previous work that I did with the front suspension, so I can get the coilovers mounted and get the last of the upper control arms finished and boxed in. I can also get the rear suspension built and get the coilovers mounted for the rear. So I can put a, hopefully in the next few weeks, check mark and a done stamp on some of that work that has been kind of hanging for the last few weeks. So I certainly appreciate everybody watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really does help me out. Hope to see you again. And everybody, have a great day.